All right, Joe, you're joining us. It looks like you might be in like Havana today. What's up, man?
Senor. No. I'm just outside getting ready to go to my daughter's tennis match in a couple hours. So
Just felt like
figured I'd,
making people feel bad that live where it's cold.
it's weird because you know how we all got this like super spreader cold from East Denver. Even people I know who just came back from Brazil and Colombia, they're all sick too. So there's this
Yeah,
cold
it's
just ripping,
crazy,
and
dude.
and I don't know if it's like I had the AC on. So, when I got back from Denver and it was, cranking. And I don't know if that's what
Right?
gets me or what, but it's just, you know, got that cold head feeling. And I took some Sudafed last night so I could sleep. But today I'm just groggy as can be. So
You know what I
hopefully the
had never
sun will like
taken
pick me up.
before?
What?
I had never taken before, except this time I made my son take it. I remember I forgot what the brand name of it is, but it's an expectorant.
Oh,
It
yeah?
like drains the mucus out of your body somehow. I don't know what it is, glyphosate, something like that. There's a brand name for it. Anyway, um, my wife and son, when he started taking the expectorant, knocked it out pretty quick. My wife still has it lingering. She hasn't been taking it. I started taking the expectorant when we got back on Monday, I guess, and I started feeling a lot better last night. I still have it, but it's like much, much better. It's like a cough
Oh,
suppressant
good.
along with this thing for mucus or something. Sean said
Yeah, I
Kobe
never.
was your friend.
There you go. Like, what was that movie, that book I remember reading in the 80s, like Jim Carroll's book called Basketball Diaries? I
I don't
guess
know.
back in the day, the cough syrup had a lot more codeine and I guess what
Oh
would it be,
yeah,
other opioids. And so the kids were always just drinking that.
yeah.
Um, and so it talks about that. If you ever read it, Basketball Diaries, and it was Jim
I'll check it
Carroll was
out.
a musician, poet type character from I guess, the
Oh,
50s and 60s. So, pretty interesting stuff set in New York City. And I always like a
nice.
good New York City story. But yeah, I didn't really
Niblets
get the
does
coughing
Joe.
and stuff. Hmm?
Oh, I did, man. I was up all night the first night. Like when we got back, I was like,
Uh,
thought I was gonna hack a lung
Sorry.
up. That's all right. So. I don't get sick that too often, but a lot of allergies, but that's about it. Niblet says Joe is dressed for mojitos and dominoes. Yeah, that's why I say he's a
There you
little
go.
Havana at the Domino's parks. Gotta love
That's
those little
right. Getting
parks,
ready.
those old guys screaming at each other.
Yeah, it reminds me of, well, not the screaming part, but it sort of reminds me of the chess matches in like different parks in New York City where
Yeah,
the old guys
yeah,
just sit
same
out and play
concept.
chess. Yeah, chess for money.
Yep,
Um, Great way to spend your time.
absolutely. Absolutely. All right, I'm going to try to get some stories loaded up. We have today, I hope. I haven't received any notification he can't make it. Is it Mark or Martin? Hold on. Mark Morton is joining
Hmm.
us from a company that Sean hooked us up with.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
the mining company, the company that uses the excess energy at renewable energy to set up Bitcoin mining operations, and I believe Sean has a small stake in that operation as well. So
Yeah, I'm
it
sure
should
it's real
be
small.
should be interesting.
you know,
Yeah, absolutely. Let me
Sean,
make sure I don't
Sean
screw up
seems.
the name of their companies. Is it Scilling or Skilling Mining? How do you pronounce that?
I don't.
Schilling? S C
Well,
I L
probably
L I N G.
it's probably a Celtic name, right? I mean, I'm guessing
I don't know.
that's
I don't know.
that might be Silling or something like that. I don't know,
Yeah, I don't know.
but
I
I'm
don't know.
sure you'll get corrected right away. So,
Yeah, let's make sure I get corrected. I live to be corrected.
Brad's favorite
That's why
activity. We
that's
did a
why I
lot of
got
that.
that's why I got married and stayed married.
There you go. Just a masochist there for it, huh?
Exactly. That's why you got divorced.
Yeah, a couple times.
I did do that once.
That's that's right. Yeah, you have one under your belt. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, she was a half Spaniard, half Cuban, so
ooh,
I was often corrected.
so like a wildcat. Rawr. That's a compliment, everybody. It's a compliment. So.
Chuck says Joe's old school. That's his highlight outfit. Have you ever been to one of those? I've never been to a highlight match.
Either have I, but I was, I occasionally restream Mad Men. They have that one highlight, a couple of highlight episodes in Mad Men. I can't remember what season, but it's
oh shit,
talking about
right.
What's the guy, the big highlight? Pachi, I think is his name. And it's just a good show. If you like, pitch deals and you do things like that, it's just such a good show to watch, just to see, how they pitch and how they tap into different veins of that. And of course, it's the 60s, so everybody's drinking liquor in the office at like 9 a.m. and they smoke 8 packs of cigarettes.
Yeah.
They start having heart attacks at 35 or something, and you're just like, wow, that's why everybody died.
Dude. Well, I just finished last night with my son. We finished season 3 of The Boys, and I cannot recommend it enough. As long as you can stomach the most gratuitous violence you have ever seen on a screen in your life. I mean, literally, it does more gratuitous than that. So, but it is. Now, this is big for my son, who is a Marvel fanatic. He decided that this series has far more depth of character and better writing than anything Marvel's produced.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah. And he's seen everything Marvel's produced and made me watch everything Marvel's produced.
Was Guardian of the Galaxy... Sorry, I'm going to get a little background noise here. Was Guardian of the Galaxy Marvel?
Yeah, that's Marvel. That's a great movie series. It's funny as shit.
Yeah,
show. I love that.
That first one, I remember going with my mom and daughter to it, and it was just absolutely hysterical.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good.
Chris Pratt, right? Is that his name? The actor?
Chris Pratt. Yeah, he's funny as shit. He's really
he is.
All right, let's run up some quick little news before Sean says that Mark's on his way, but let's run up. Oh, yeah, I did send I sent Mark the link earlier this week. And there he is. Well, we'll get started with Mark, and we'll do some news after.
Perfect.
All right. Mark, you ready to go? Give me a thumbs up if you're ready to go. All right, buddy.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Yep.
How are you, sir?
Good. Not too bad. So I wasn't sure if it was 5 or quarter past, so I said I'd kind of jump in somewhere in between.
No, it's all good. The invite was for a quarter past. We like to have a little time for Joe and I to say stupid, nonsensical shit before other people get on. So glad you
Hopefully
could.
You got all that in.
We did. We got it all out. It's all good. It's all good. We talk about shit that absolutely nobody cares about except the two of us, and they just kind of have to suffer through it until we get to the smart people like you. So that's the plan.
Hopefully I can provide the smarts anyway. Otherwise, I'll just pick up where you left off.
Well, Sean guaranteed you would supply smarts, so I'm gonna have to get my money back if it's not.
Yeah, well, exactly. I have big boots to fill. So if Sean made a promise, I'd want to do some bit of justice to it, I suppose.
No, I'm just kidding with you. No. So Mark, thanks so much for joining us. The way we usually try to do this is, give us a little background on yourself, and then tell us how you got into kind of this. This is such a fascinating business that you guys are building. How you got into it, and then let's get into exactly kind of what it does and why and how it functions and the opportunities available around it, if you don't mind.
Yeah, perfect. So I suppose the best thing to do is probably just kick off with myself, I suppose, as an individual. So I started I have a degree basically in financial maths. That's kind of just to sum it up, which I started in 2017 and finished in 2021. But about halfway through that degree, I'd heard, murmurings of people that had done quite well, just as I was kind of leaving secondary school here in Ireland during the 2017 bull run. And so kind of intuitively, I felt like during college going up and asking them, how they had done so well and what was kind of the catch, assuming that, I'd ultimately missed the boat and there was nothing else to be kind of extracted from this crypto thing I'd heard all about in 2017. But there was this kind of underlying idea that these people kept mentioning in my course that was, 2017 was great, but it's all going to come back around again. And there's these thing called cycles, and there was one in 13 and 17, and 2021 is probably going to be the same. And so for an individual that was quite inquisitive anyway, that was all I kind of needed to say, well, look, if these guys are telling me that it's going to come back around again, in my naivety, I may as well kind of give it some time and see if it interests me. And so that's essentially what I did in late 2019. And as soon as I started kind of delving into this idea of crypto, I didn't really stop. It was just kind of a never-ending rabbit hole from there. And I spent the majority of 2020, all my time during the lockdowns that we had here in Ireland, just focusing on crypto as an overall idea. And that was, really heavily DeFi focused. Given the kind of financial background that the guys had that I was surrounded by, that was kind of what interested them. And so as a result of that, it's kind of what interested me. But slowly but surely over that kind of year to 18-month period, I just kind of started finding myself questioning, I keep getting told from all these different sources that, Bitcoin is kind of the old dog here. It's the boring one. And there's all these newer, shinier things coming to the market that are going to do all these different things that are basically going to leave Bitcoin kind of in the dust over the next couple of years. But after, as I said, 18 months to kind of 2 years in the space, all these newer and shinier things hadn't actually delivered any of the stuff that they promised that they were going to do. So as much as they had all this optionality and had all these sponsorships and agreements to do X, Y, and Z with all these big companies, supposedly nothing had actually materialized. So I kind of just started asking myself, well, look, as much as these coins have done well, the tide lifts all boats here. Maybe that's just what's happening. Maybe these things aren't actually providing any meaningful value. Maybe they're just being dragged up by this old boring one over the course of the past 2 years. And so maybe I should give the Bitcoin thing a bit of time. And what I personally started to find is the more time I spent on Bitcoin, in my personal preference, the less time I wanted to spend dabbling in all the other stuff. And that was a kind of slow process that I went through over time. Ultimately, where I personally felt that was where the signal was amongst all the noise that I had experienced for the previous 2.5 years. And in that time of transitioning to just focusing my time and energy personally on Bitcoin, I met a like-minded individual, Stuart, who wanted to start an Irish Bitcoin business, which is obviously a very generalistic and vague idea at the beginning. But that kind of general idea eventually became what is Scilling Mining, for a number of reasons, which we can chat through if you're interested, I suppose.
So were you already hanging out with Sean during the course of your transition into maximalism?
I wasn't. Sean, I met Sean a lot later than that, believe it or not. So I've only met Sean, in the past number of months. I was kind of well on my way, if not, completely on my way before me and Sean crossed paths. But we seemed to align quite well when we did.
Because that sounds like you went through the Sean School of Bitcoin, man. That was like a beautiful transitional story. That was awesome. Really, really good. That was great.
It was. Yeah, it was perfect.
Absolutely.
I don't know what journey Sean went on. Sean went on a lot longer journey than I did, but it seems we both kind of came to a similar conclusion at the end of it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what makes it fun to hang out with Sean. It's the same kind of challenged thinking that you went through for yourself. Sean provides that for all of us. He'll keep pushing us. So we're all Bitcoin maxis. So
yeah.
That's very cool. So you guys, love that story. I love the way you got there, and I think it's very interesting. Kind of this generalized notion of, hey, my buddy and I want to have a business in Bitcoin. We have no idea what that's going to be. So can you get us down the path of okay, you thought through the process of I'm going to build something or do something around Bitcoin, and then you ended up where you are?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I suppose, as I said, that was the kind of initial core idea, which of course, is a very basic idea. To other people that seems like a crazy idea, but to anyone that's as far down the path as we were, just saying you want to start a Bitcoin business was the easiest first step. And there was a few kind of points that were taken into account, which is we were kind of looking around the industry and asking ourselves, like, as individuals and as a business, our core goal is going to be to accumulate as much Bitcoin as we possibly can. So we looked around and said, who are the best people at that? And we started looking, we were spending a lot of time on Glassnode and so on, and kept seeing all the balances of these miners and started saying, well, miners seem to be, pretty good in comparison to a lot of other businesses that can take payments in fiat and transition it into Bitcoin. But these guys are actually generating Bitcoin as their core income and their core business. So, maybe that's what we should focus our time on. And part and parcel of that as well is, as I said, I had a traditional degree in financial mathematics and actuarial sciences. So I was kind of headed down the kind of traditional finance route anyway. And so going into financial services, financial investments, doing a fund, doing consulting, wasn't something that was, overly kind of intriguing to myself and Stuart. Whereas the mining, in our minds, first of all, ticked the box, which was it'll allow us to accumulate Bitcoin as a core goal of our business. But it is something that's a bit different as opposed to the routes that we were already on. Stuart is a bit older than myself and kind of had a background in banking. He was in Royal Bank of Scotland and he did a degree in economics, and so he had that traditional background. But we wanted to do something different. And aside from that, energy was something that interested us quite a lot, which is we kind of had a sit down at one stage around the table and said, look, we can wear shirts and ties, or we can wear boots and jeans and go to wind farms and solar farms, or ideally oil and gas sites. This was the simple kind of split down the middle of the ideology as to where we were headed. And in every kind of aspect, the mining kind of just shouted at us as the one that was that bit more intriguing. And so, as I said, the Bitcoin side of things, but also just the preferential side of wanting to go down a different path, of kind of the one that we were already on, was a key factor in that decision as well.
That's awesome. That's great. So I love the fact that, you guys were interested in energy and what was available out there, and you were interested in kind of the mining for accumulation. I think those are great motivators. How did you arrive at, well, first tell us what Schilling is doing, and then tell us how you arrived at deciding that. Maybe that'll be evident from you telling us what it does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in short, Schilling basically does, containerized mining solutions, which is we basically make boxes completely from scratch that'll allow you to buy in Bitcoin mining machines and drop them wherever there's stranded electricity. So wherever you might have excess solar, where you might have excess wind, where you might have a biogas plant that can't export as much energy as it thought it otherwise would have been able to, because the grid didn't quite develop in the way it expected, or you can't get grid connected. What you can do is essentially buy our containerized solution full of ASICs or full of Bitcoin mining machines and drop it on site, and allows you then to soak up that excess energy and monetize that energy in stranded capacity locations. But I suppose how we kind of ended up going down the kind of containerized route and focusing on that is, I took a lot of inspiration early on from the likes of Marty Bent and Steve Barber and these guys in Great American Mining and Upstream Data and a few of these other companies in the US that were mining off of flare gas on the oil and gas fields. But in Ireland we have basically zero flaring, and we don't have oil and gas fields. So we kind of started asking ourselves, look, we can't do their model, so what's the Irish model? And we took one look at the price of on-grid electricity in Ireland, which at the time was 13, 14 cents per kilowatt. In the past 12 months, you would have seen, in some instances, 40 cents plus per kilowatt, which is obviously insane. So we very early on realized, connecting into the grid here and building a data center and dragging it off the grid isn't going to work. We're going to have to be a bit more strategic. We're going to have to be a bit more innovative if we're going to be able to make mining work in Ireland. Otherwise, we're just going to have to consider going elsewhere. And what we started to realize is that, look, the scale that you'd see in the US probably isn't going to be applicable here. So this idea of retrofitting shipping containers or building big, large facilities like the one in Rockdale in Texas just isn't going to apply to Ireland. And so then we decided to partner up with some guys in Cork here in Ireland and basically build our own custom containers from scratch. That'll basically allow you to monetize very, very small amounts of energy, or slightly bigger pockets of energy of 250 kilowatts. But the joy of it is that you can basically match the amount of mining that you need to the amount of stranded energy that you have. And that's why essentially how we came to the conclusion that we have, in that Ireland doesn't have a problem with generating electricity. But there is a problem in Ireland with harnessing and the transmission of that energy around Ireland. And so that's where you get these pockets of stranded capacity, essentially.
That's really cool. Were you able to ascertain kind of how much, or estimate how much stranded energy there is around Ireland?
Yeah, so that was kind of where the inspiration came from, which is, we kind of, like any business very early on probably has a bit of naivety where you think, oh, this is going to be great, let's just become miners. And then, as I said, we took a look at the price of on-grid electricity and said, okay, maybe this isn't going to be quite as simple as we thought it otherwise might have been. And so we started reading a thing called dispatch down reports, which basically tells you how much, wind electricity is wasted every year in Ireland. And what we started realizing from these reports is that as they onboard new renewable generation, the grid just isn't keeping up. So you're seeing this amount, these levels of constraint and curtailment all over the grid, consistently rising year on year. And what we started to realize is that, as I said, generating electricity isn't a problem. Ireland has a lot of electricity. So while you hear about people talking about an energy crisis, in a lot of instances, it's just the fact that it can't get to where it needs to go. And so that kind of set us on the path of, okay, well, maybe we don't need to leave Ireland. Maybe there is a model here that is slightly smaller scale to the US, and that is definitely at the moment solely off grid. But there is a model here that can work. And so we kind of decided early on from the kind of reports that we'd read on wind and solar and biogas, we said, look, let's just stick it out and work harder. While it is going to be more difficult to prove this model, we do think there's a model here that's going to be meaningful. And so we continued on that path, and now we have a few boxes kind of out in the wild operating, which is great. And we have interest from a number of others as well in the past while.
Hey, Mark, quick question. This is Joe. I just want to get in when there's a lot of noise around me. With your revenue model, do people lease the boxes from you, or do they pay a flat rate? Sorry, I always jump right ahead of Brad on that one.
That's perfect. Apologies. Go for it, man.
Yeah, and then how does what are you kind of seeing as the average ROI or return on investment on, say, that purchase or lease for clients?
Yeah, so from our perspective, we're quite easygoing when it comes to whether we would lease a box and kind of do a rev share on a large scale site, or if we would just sell the boxes because they're our boxes, their IP, we can just give them to people to mine it themselves. Generally, what we would try look for is kind of an ROI of around 2 years or less, because given the kind of life cycle of the machines and so on, you don't want to be getting into 4 or 5 years plus. But that being said, there's kind of a number of different variations of this model, and we're kind of, as I said, open to whatever suits people most. If it's in a very kind of isolated location and very, very small scale, it might not make sense for us to be splitting revenue with that individual and managing that box ourselves, just because it creates a logistical issue. But if you had a very large scale box that's connected to a biogas plant that has nice uptime, and the person doesn't want 100% exposure to Bitcoin, then that's something that we would then consider being involved in. But we've found from our perspective it's been a complete mix. But if anything, people are showing a willingness here, and maybe it's something that surprised us to mine themselves. I think the joy of mining is the kind of independent and sovereign nature of it, which is it's not like having AWS servers in a box whereby you have to ask someone if you can switch them on and switch them off. As soon as you buy a box and machines off us, it's your energy demand, and you're free to do whatever you want with that box, which is something that I think people like, especially when you have a single turbine, or you have a hydro plant in the middle of nowhere, or you have a biogas plant. These people and these energy producers are used to being able to do their own thing. And so, I think that's kind of the way they like to continue their model. And so this is why, buying the boxes off us is something that we've seen as being the preference up until this point.
One quick follow-up. Do you find that it's the individuals that are, let's say, the contract people on those development sites, the energy development sites, or is it the actual companies that look for a way to sort of diversify their kind of investment cost or offset it until they turn on, say, the oil, gas, or hydro or whatever power they're generating?
Yes, so we've seen it as a complete mix, actually. I think in general, in Ireland you have individual operators that own and manage their own sites and sell to the grid. You obviously then have larger portfolios whereby some will own multiple wind farms that are operated by certain individuals, but it's all part of their portfolio. But I think in general, Ireland is just finding its feet when it comes to mining, and we're, aside from our core business, educating individuals and companies on mining is a key part of what we do, which is, I think in the US, there's kind of stronger split opinions on Bitcoin and on mining in general, but at least people are quite informed. Whereas I think Ireland is getting to the stage where we're now kind of dipping our toe into it, and people are just looking for exposure. And it's why I think the small boxes from our perspective might do quite well, which is people are looking at it and saying, look, I don't know if I'm ready to dive in and be a Bitcoin miner with 300 machines, but 2 or 6 machines is somewhere that I could start with. And I think that's where I'm saying we've seen the mix, which is you're seeing companies come to us and say, look, this might be something, but the Bitcoin thing is kind of a hard sell for us inside here. But if we could take a 2-machine box and just see that it works, you know, and see how simple it is, you know, once we have it set up, then, you know, maybe that might speak more volume than the kind of ambiguity that we currently feel around Bitcoin as a whole. Because I think ultimately Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining will stack up for itself. I think the model proves itself to be quite meaningful, and it's just a matter of more and more people taking that little first step and then realizing, actually, you know, this is in reality just flexible demand that I can put on my site. You know, whether it's Bitcoin or whether it's not is actually quite irrelevant. And so as more and more people normalize this idea of mining, I think the market will just get bigger and bigger.
Yeah,
That's
very,
awesome.
very cool. Thank you.
No problem.
What are you seeing as kind of the Sean loves to talk about burning cow manure for Bitcoin, but what are you seeing as kind of the breakdown of the different energy sources that you guys are encountering?
Honestly, so up until before Christmas, it was kind of heavily focused on biogas. But we had the Farmers Journal, which is a kind of a big traditional media outlet here in Ireland for the agricultural sector, do an article on us in December. And since then, what I expected was an increase in kind of biogas inquiries, but it's actually been the opposite. We've actually had a lot of wind and solar guys reach out to us with a variety of different models. And now I would honestly say we're at the stage where we're kind of evenly stretched amongst inquiries between wind, solar, biogas, and we've also had a couple of hydro ones as well. All of them very, very different models, you know, which is the biogas ones are kind of slightly simpler. And then we've had people inquiring that have wind turbines that power their factories but can't export to the grid because the grid can't take that much export capacity. And they're turning on heaters and fans on the roof to try use up the energy because they have no other use case for it. And so they're coming to us and saying, well, look, we may as well put it through the machines and get it back almost like a subsidy for using this energy, this excess energy that we have, instead of just creating hot air for no reason. So it's a complete mix, which is what we want. You know, we would love to, you know, by the middle of this year to say, they're not our sites per se, but there's instances of each different energy source all finding strategic value in one way or another through the use of mining, which would be a kind of nice, you know, use case of each.
Well, and it seems like you'll be at a position where eventually all of the guys who are installing those systems, whether it's the bio, the solar, the wind, whatever, are just going to come. If I were selling it to someone with the property, I would say, hey, we've partnered with Schilling, and now we're going to be able to provide you, right, as a part of the package. We're going to do these wind turbines, and that becomes part of the whole deal.
Yeah, and I think the model will continue to develop. I think, as I said, it'll be a case of normalizing the idea of mining, which is, in my opinion, I think over the next decade, Bitcoin mining will be a key part of the majority of people's energy asset portfolios, which is people will start to reimagine how they view, you know, their renewable build out and how they strategically build all of these different wind and solar farms and hydro plants, and have mining kind of in the back of their mind as to how can I bolt this on? You know, how will this make the payback or the kind of economies of scale of this site actually stack up that bit better. And so that normalizing of mining hopefully will align with the cool off in on-grid pricing in Ireland, which again might start make mining even more appealing over the next couple of years. Because then you might have a stage where mining transitions on grid, and Ireland may start to look a bit more like ERCOT in Texas. And the kind of off-grid model might start to fade away, you know. But it's an ever-changing model, but one that we think will always be relevant. Right.
If the price gets low enough with the grid, then obviously it's profitable for you. But if it's not, then these alternatives will be as profitable for you for the longer term. Is Ireland unique in kind of this stranded energy scenario, or are there a lot of other countries or places that this is something you could also be selling to?
I think there's a lot of countries that will all be experiencing the same problem. I think what you've seen because of the change in the kind of energy outlook over the past 12 months, given that everything that's gone on over on this side of the Atlantic, is now people are constantly looking at how can we speed up our renewable build out. You know, whether people believe that's for better or for worse, that's not up to us to decide, but that's what the EU is focused on, which is scaling up renewables and bringing on hundreds and hundreds of gigawatts by 2030 to try improve our energy independence and our energy sovereignty. But what's going to come with that is this constant issue of grid capacity. And you're seeing it in the UK, you're seeing it in Portugal, you're seeing it in Spain, you're seeing it all over, because you can build renewable infrastructure very fast, but improving the grid at that same relative pace is extremely difficult. And so you're going to continue to have this problem whereby they're continuing to speed up renewable build out, and either those renewables aren't making it to market, which is, I've seen figures in some instances around Europe and the UK, which is people are being told, okay, it's great, you have all your financing, you have all your planning, but your grid connection is going to be in 2036. And, and people are saying, well, 2036, if you're being honest, is no good to us. We have the business plan and the funding now. 2036 is kind of the nail in the coffin for this. And you're seeing quotes from people that are saying, nobody can hold a renewable project for that long. And so they're going to be the guys that are now saying, well, look, we can either throw this business plan in the bin, or maybe we can see if there's an alternative way to allow this, eventually make it to market. And then we're kind of trying to come along and say, look, you might not know it yet, but mining could well be your solution until the grid comes out to you.
We're kind of, where are you guys in terms of scaling your business to be able to kind of, snag a lot of that market share? I assume it's fairly capital intensive just to build out the boxes and scale kind of manufacturing and installation. What are you guys kind of facing for the business itself going forward?
Yeah, well, I suppose at the moment we're kind of still just tipping away as a business, as you said, kind of keeping that cost of infrastructure down, which is we're providing people with a number of boxes in a number of different locations, and that's allowing the business to continue. If there was a situation whereby we're presented because of this grid capacity issue with a large scale opportunity, which is something that we are pursuing to start self mining a lot more, then that's where we will have to kind of go out and look at a change in our current model and try raise the capital to allow a much faster and a much more aggressive expansion than the one that we're currently operating on. But what we're kind of trying to do is do our best to navigate the bear market, not take on any undue risks that we don't need to take on. I think that's been the kind of the key killer of mining companies kind of over the past 18 months is over leveraging yourself, for no reason. So we'll continue to be conservative up until the point we see the right opportunity for us. And I think the next 12 months, because of the bear market that we're in and because of the price of ASICs and the price of mining hardware as a whole, we see this as a time where we want to move maybe a bit more aggressively. And so that would be the ideal time to secure an opportunity to put on a bit of scale on that's greater than the one we already have.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. In terms of your customers, I would assume that many of them are not necessarily completely Bitcoin savvy folks. How are they managing, or how are you helping them learn to manage kind of Bitcoin coming in, holding or selling, or kind of what's the relationship like on that part of it, right? Like in leveraging the actual financial measures of accumulating Bitcoin.
Yeah, so I suppose it's been a kind of a mixed bag, I would say, which is we actually built a mini display room in our office kind of 18 months ago, which was we tore down all the shelving, we took out all the carpets, the whole lot, repainted the whole thing, made it almost look like it was the inside of a container. And what we kind of did early on is that instead of just kind of neglecting the idea of Bitcoin and saying, oh, what you do is just liquidate it straight away and don't be involved in Bitcoin, it's because you don't worry your kind of selves about it. You don't have to. Obviously, because we're a Bitcoin business and we're as individuals, we're pretty heavily involved in the Bitcoin side of things. We wanted people to have that kind of Bitcoin savviness and the interest themselves. If they were mining, we wanted them to actually have a vested interest in what Bitcoin was and learning a bit more about it. So when we would talk to all of these energy guys, we would actually basically bring them in for a couple of hours at a time, and we would show them the 5 S19s we had running upstairs, walk them through the Bitcoin mining display room, and explain what S19s were, explain what ASICs were, and then we would put a projector up on the wall and we would go Bitcoin from first principles all the way through mining, all the way through energy, and then how they kind of all amalgamate together. So then because we as I said, we didn't want to neglect that part of it, and what we've seen is that the majority, or almost, I would probably say everyone so far has actually decided that they want to keep some of the Bitcoin that they're earning, and become just a bit more sovereign with it. Which is, we talked to them about cold storage, we talked to them about hot wallets, we explained how you get your your cold storage set up, whether it be your Ledger or Trezor or whatever it might be, and now they're actually holding on to the majority of the Bitcoin that they're taking in, up until the point obviously where they might feel like they want to offload some of it, but at least they've gone through that part, and it's not just a case of they have some miners sitting on their site and they're using mining as a means of exchange between energy and fiat. They're actively then getting involved in the mining side of things, which to us is obviously quite important.
Yeah, absolutely. One of our listeners says, Euphoric said, an alt called Power Ledger was set up to tokenize energy throughout the world. It was created by a brilliant lady called Dr. Hema Green. I'm not familiar with that, but interesting to know. And Niblets says, what is the average price per kilowatt you need for break even? And I guess how long that takes.
Yeah, so I at the moment, just from figures I probably looked at yesterday, I think a new enough S19 is probably earning you around 10 cents per kilowatt. In revenue, It might be slightly less. So that would be kind of essentially your break-even point. But you never really want to be, because of the drawdowns that you might see in a Bitcoin bear market, you never want to be exposing yourself to that break-even level, which is, the name of the game when things get dicey in the mining market, is to stay on and, do whatever you can to stay mining. And so you always want to be looking at kind of the worst case scenario, which again is kind of part and parcel of why we are trying to now at the moment, just for now, focus on stranded assets, because if that electricity has no other buyer, then, your break-even point is essentially zero, which means no matter how bad things get, at least you can stay on. And just going back to the one on kind of tokenizing energy, as it's something that I feel quite strongly about, which is people at the moment focus a lot on tokenizing everything. Yeah, I think that's a very, very big theme at the moment, which is you can tokenize the whole world, right? But there's a key underlying factor, which is you can tokenize real world assets, but those real world assets still exist, and you still have to do real world proof of reserves. And so, in my opinion, I think it's a lot more meaningful to use something like Bitcoin mining to have that real world connection, which is you're putting real world infrastructure down, you're monetizing that energy on site in the real world, and you're turning it into either Bitcoin or you're turning it into fiat currency. And that's an actual real world example of using the asset. And whereas I think this idea of kind of tokenizing energy and tokenizing real world assets can sometimes try to remove itself from the asset that it's ultimately going to be forever linked to. And sometimes the kind of ideology around that can sometimes eventually just lack actual value in what it's trying to do.
That makes sense. From the perspective of two financial guys, what was it like really having to dive into kind of all the nuts and bolts of energy usage and energy functioning and all of that, along with all the hardware demands and needs, and understanding what you guys would actually have to build to make this happen? I mean, was this something where you brought in people on the outside, or were you just spending months and months doing the research yourselves and building from there?
Yeah, so early on, it was definitely just months and months of from the energy side anyway, and trying to identify our potential market and where mining might apply. It was just months and months of reading dispatch down reports and solar reports, and just trying to get a self-taught degree in renewables. Essentially, that was that's one of the elements of it, which is you can do that yourself if you just put quite a lot of time into it. But then when it came to the design of containers and so on, we were lucky. Part of building the display room was finding the kind of right electrical partners, which is when they did the display room, it was a good kind of trial for those electrical guys that we ultimately ended up partnering up with. And then they introduced us to a crowd in just outside of Cork City that specialized in air vac units. So I basically brought the idea to the electrical guys, who then we came together and brought it to the air vac guys and said, look, this might sound a bit weird. I know you usually specialize in air vac units and heat pumps and heat exchangers, but you're experts in airflow, and that's the kind of key thing. And so we've got this idea to put these mining machines. Well, we started by calling them computer servers before, we didn't want to walk in talking about Bitcoin mining, but eventually we did tell them that they were Bitcoin miners. But we came together kind of as a trio then to kind of bring this idea that we had to fruition, and they had, you know, really good experience already, which allowed us to, you know, as you said, we started as financial guys, but eventually we were able to get something, you know, set up and running, you know, on that side in Armagh.
Sean says, is Cork actually a city?
Yeah, believe it or not, Cork is actually a city. People will call it the real capital of Ireland as well. You know, that might be up for debate. It depends on what Sean's opinion on that is. But the real capital of Ireland is Cork. It might say Dublin, but if anyone asks you, you know, just tell them it's Cork City.
I love that. That's friggin' awesome. Let me see. I'm going to make sure I hit all my questions. I think you did cover almost everything in there. So kind of what's, you know, obviously you guys are still, you're probably spending a good majority of your time out, you know, evangelizing, persuading, talking to people about, you know, how this is valuable to them and how it all works. Is that pretty much kind of every day? Are you guys feel pretty good from a engineering perspective about where your boxes are, that now you can really just be pitching and selling and marketing it now?
Yeah, to an extent, I think with anything, I think you're always trying to improve, which is, you know, we have designs that we're very, very happy with, but again, you know, we're always looking back over them. And, you know, I had a meeting with our main electrician last week to just say, look, how can we either fit more machines in, or how can we clean it up? How can we make it look better? How can we reduce the size of our electrical paneling while still keeping the kind of same quality and the same kind of security that we had in the boxes? And, you know, can we swap out some of our electrical paneling for a different style? You know, all these different things we're always looking at, because as much as we, as I said, have a design we're pleased with, there's always ways I think you can make it better, you know, whether it be swapping to smart PDUs, whether it be changing the fans, whether it be changing the layout of the racking. And I don't think we'll ever stop doing that, if I'm being honest. Maybe we will, if you know, eventually, but I think you're probably always learning, and you know, new things are always appearing where you might say, look, that's, you know, that's slightly better. And it's the same, you know, with the kind of emergence of hydro mining, you know, and all these other things, and immersion mining. It's always something that's on our mind. So our containers at the moment are just air cooled. But you know, if hydro mining is something that we think could be quite meaningful for certain clients over time, then maybe it's something that we should do our due diligence on and try see if it's a container that we would swap to, especially with the backgrounds that our guys have in heat pumps and heat exchangers and so on. It could be a match made in heaven for them. And one of our electrical guys is always shouting at me saying that we should swap to hydro, but you know, all in due time, essentially.
Yeah. No, you've got to be careful about that, but that's sounds like a good path forward. In terms of kind of the company itself, are you guys thinking you'll expand beyond Ireland? Are you guys going to be raising more money for expansion down the line? Are you hiring people? Kind of give us you know, if somebody's interested in getting involved with you guys or reaching out to inquire more, what should they do?
Yeah, so I think, you know, we're definitely looking to expand. I think we have a few ideas in here, which is we want to develop software. We want to kind of really zone in on this idea of kind of intermittent mining, because I think, as I said, you know, renewables is on the forefront of where Europe wants to go, but part and parcel of kind of those renewables is that they're going to be intermittent, which is they're going to have to find a way to really efficiently mine within those peaks and troughs of energy generation. And so we're always kind of looking to kind of just expand as much as we can beyond this idea of just delivering boxes. You know, there's a lot of ideas that we have that's, you know, as I said, involved in software and so on. And that's where we'd kind of like to push into and expand our offering overall. So there's a number of stages of that, which, you know, in our mind could take years, but that's not just limited to Ireland, as I said earlier. You know, the UK is experiencing grid problems. Portugal is experiencing them. Spain is experiencing them. So, you know, we would love to expand the amount of people that we have working for us, and, you know, open a Lisbon office, open a London office. All of these things would be ideal. But it's just about finding the kind of right strategic person to do that with. I think that, you know, ultimately, we're a Bitcoin focused company, and the people that we align ourselves with, we would like them to share that same ethos and those same values. And, you know, I think you look back at some of the miners that kind of struggled over the past while, or any of these Bitcoin related companies. And I think, you know, there are a lot of VCs out there, and, you know, they're funding a lot of projects, but in some instances you would worry that the crash and burn model makes more sense, which is, you know, just move, leverage up as much as you can, try get your investment back, and if you do or die, then that's fine. Whereas we think the kind of whole Bitcoin ethos is this kind of, you've got one shot at doing something correctly, so build slowly, do it methodically, do it correctly. And so if we were to partner up with someone that's interested in investing in us or progressing with us, we would like them to kind of be on that same path and be aligned with us, in that way, which would be a pretty important part of our expansion when, hopefully it comes, sooner rather than later.
Sure. No, that makes total sense. And I think your approach is smart. I think this is something that, you can grow into gradually without overdoing it and stretching yourselves too thin. So it makes total sense. I'm really excited for you guys. I think this is a really powerful model. I think you guys are pretty brilliant for kind of diving in and figuring out where you wanted to go. I love the path and I love the story. So I really appreciate it. Joe, did you have any other questions you wanted to ask?
Yeah, no, I was going to say that I really like the organic growth model when focusing in on the ethos properly and then focusing on Ireland first. But I definitely see a model where you could maybe not open offices up and maybe drop containers to people in different locations, more remote locations. But those companies sorry, there's a lot of background noise here. Those companies don't typically share the same ethos. So you have to kind of balance that, as you said. But yeah, no, this is great. I mean, I was thinking a lot, about projects in, say, South America and places like that, or, Africa, where, if you can turn, at least offset a lot of the development costs there through something like this, that makes projects profitable faster. So definitely something to balance with your ethics, of course. But yeah, this is a great play. It was real nice to meet you, Mark. And thanks, Sean, for introducing us to Mark. It's a great project.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
We had another question from Niblets. What is your strategy for dealing with ASICs as they become obsolete? Is that something you guys have to swap out and plan to swap out as they go age?
Yeah, so I suppose it's something that people talk about a lot, which is this constant talk of miners last 2 years and then you need to swap them out. But I think what's more important than the actual idea of the miners is the economics and the area in which you're running them, which is, there's people that were running S9s 6.5 years after they were released on the oil and gas fields because their economics dictated, look, I'm currently getting fined or I'm getting nothing for this gas. And so my 1.5 cents that I'm getting off of running this S9, stacks up. So I'm going to do whatever I can, which are ripping off power units, ripping off fans, replacing them. I'm going to do whatever I can to keep this machine running up until the point where it doesn't make economic sense to do so. And I think that's something that's, again, with regards to stranded energy, will improve the longevity, of your machine, which is, it depends on your overall economics in your given area. What's your energy source? What's your uptime? And you'll see all these kind of different models emerge, which is, as I said, the S9 is something that I always like to refer to, mainly because what you hear is people talk about e-waste and digiconomists and all these people saying that ASICs get thrown in the bin after 18 months to 2 years because they're worthless. There's a number of kind of different instances that show that that's not the case. And I think with the kind of dawn of intermittent mining or mining renewables, I think what you'll start seeing is, if you have a very high uptime site, you'll use a new machine because you'll know that machine is always going to be on and it's going to pay itself off very, very quickly. Whereas if you have a site that has a bit of intermittency and doesn't have, quite, the uptime as the other site, you might use a slightly older machine that other people don't see the economic value in because of the fact that it's only on 40 or 50% of the time. You might start seeing the S19s in 5 or 6 years time transitioning from high uptime sites to what you might call low uptime soakage sites that kick in 30 or 40% of the time, because you need to get your capex down in order for that lower uptime site to stack up financially. And again, all of these different use cases, while people talk about ASICs going obsolete, are extending the life cycle or the lifespan of those machines, because ultimately they're a very durable machine. They run very, very hard, but at the same time, you can swap fans, you can swap PSUs, and you can get them going again. And you're seeing repair centers pop up all over the place, all of which are part and parcel of this idea of trying to drag out the lifespan of that machine. And as I said, what will dictate that lifespan isn't the actual machine itself per se, it's the economics around that machine.
Yeah. When you talk about you guys building software, is that something where you're thinking about things like optimizing the time that the machines are on, pooling all of the machines in your network together into your own mining pools so that you're optimizing for mining? I mean, is that the kinds of stuff you guys are thinking about?
Yeah, well, so we're kind of just focusing on, people talk about, these machines being location agnostic and perfectly flexible and all these things, but if you don't have a very simple and efficient way to control them, then they're not. I think that's kind of a misconception, which is an S19 is a perfectly flexible demand source if you have a very good kind of remote mechanism to control it. Whereas if you don't, then if you have to walk in and turn it off by hand, it's not as flexible as people say it is. And so that's
Sure.
something that we're focusing on quite heavily, which is how can you make the user experience as flexible as people talk about it being? And I think software is something that we would like to get into, which deals with that issue and allows that flexibility to interact with the likes of wind and solar and all these other sources. And so I think that's something that I personally and us in here will try to focus on over the next while.
That's awesome. What's your website again, Mark?
It's skillingmining.com.
Skillingmining.com. Well, I really appreciate it. This was fascinating and has, 100 ideas flowing through my head of all my farming relatives in Oklahoma who probably have lots of stranded energy opportunities out there, as well as gas and oil wells. Really appreciate your time. I'm excited for you guys. I think it's fascinating, and I hope everybody will go check out what you're doing. And, we want to wish you much success. So appreciate you coming on and taking time to explain it all to us.
Thank you, Brian. No, I appreciate you having me on and for giving me the time and the platform to chat about it. I'm always happy to.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. It was really informative.
Anytime you guys have an update, you want to talk about more stuff that you're up to, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to have you back on.
Brilliant, guys. Thank you very much. And hopefully
thanks, Mark.
Sean's recommendation justice. He'll be able
to over here messaging. He's over here messaging me privately, apologizing for your performance. No, I'm kidding. He's good.
Gosh.
Hey, you should watch him on watch him on our Friday show. You won't be worried about it, your performance at all.
I have to listen to Sean enough. I've heard enough of Sean.
It depends on it. It depends on the Guinness factor for Sean, and how many cigarettes he's got going.
I'd rather do it in the pub. There you
go.
All right, man. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Appreciate it, guys.
Cheers, buddy.
Bye-bye. That's cool, man. I love this.
Yeah, I like that a lot, man. My mind is just spinning with the opportunities there. I mean,
me too. Yeah. Me too.
There's this big. I got a lot of background noise. Hold on. There's a lot of talk about pebble nuke reactors powering like resort complexes and big office building complexes. Why can't you just attach mines like this to those nukes and generate more money on top of power?
Yep, absolutely. Well, look, and I started thinking about, all my relatives have oil wells and gas wells on their property.
The hemp farmers?
The hemp farmers. Yeah. On their properties in Oklahoma, and they're certainly producing shit tons of cow shit. So I have no idea what they're doing on the energy side of things, but no,
you can be the family savior, man. You can be the family savior.
These guys have been banking money for years. Every time another farmer goes out of business, they buy his property. So,
oligarch farmers.
They've been stacking. They're Mennonites, and so they don't have any life expenses. They don't spend their money. So it's all about farming. So anyway,
what about you, man? What about you?
Am I a farmer? No. I have grown before, but not what they grow. She said, do you guys have an ordinal strategy? Airdropping a Bitcoin Satoshi ordinal to commemorate the purchase of one of the boxes. We guess we could have asked him that, but I doubt they do. And he said, this guy is awesome, but Bitcoin is so boring. Shizzy. Well, I don't think it's boring if you're making good money from it. Right? I mean, that's not boring. And I think there's a shit ton of opportunities happening in the Bitcoin land right now. So I understand kind of the model of it just sits there. It's boring, but anyway, Euphoric said yield farmer. Yeah, we're going to be talking about yielding tomorrow. Sean already started the discussion up in the community about what his point of view is going to be for tomorrow's show. He wants to basically tell us all that yield is the detriment of the DeFi society. So since that's everything about the DeFi society, it's going to be an interesting discussion. If you're not in our community, you should join us, t.me/mission DeFi, t.me/mission DeFi, or do a Telegram search for Mission DeFi. You'll find us, or DeFi Lunch. You can find us there. So that's all I got today, Joe. You want to go through some news? You're muted, buddy. You're still muted. Oh, there you go.
I'm showing.
There you go. Now you're not. Yeah. Now you're good. Now you're good.
Yeah. No, a buddy of mine bought this place.
It's been interesting watching the parade of people.
Yeah, no, a buddy of mine bought this place and developer, and so I kind of use offices here sometimes. And and you know, in order to get in on the developer units when the high rise goes up eventually. So
that's a good move.
Yeah, that's why that's why you see me here sometimes. Which is another project we should think about with everybody who's like, you know, all the Bitcoin miners and everybody that are interested in diversifying. You know, I mean, now we talked about tokenizing with Mark, but you know, that is a play that we should explore. You know, tokenizing some of these big developments because they're like huge projects. I mean, these are, you know, 100 million plus construction loans and, you know, 300 million in sales kind of thing. So I think in this cycle, you know, because I'm always looking to diversify. It's usually risky at the beginning, you know, if you're the developer.
Right.
But most of these guys are so like wired in that, you know, they don't have problems with permits and things like that. But it could be something interesting for our listeners.
Welcome to Miami.
Exactly. Yeah. But, you know, that's the developer game everywhere, I think.
I think so.
But, you know, yeah, there's lots of stuff going on. And I was thinking like, even like Cipriani's doing a big development, just like about 100 yards that way. And, you know, that's the Cipriani family of restaurant fame, Italy, all of that. And, you know, these are like posh luxe places going up. And I'm thinking that with, you know, I think there's going to be a little bit of economic downturn coming in real estate, that there might be some good value opportunities like we had in 08, 09, that we might want to test a model like that out on. So
well, I got to tell you, there's some big opportunities over in Naples right now that I'm getting fed. So we need to talk about that further because Naples is not going to, all that Gulf Coast is going to get rebuilt, right? The money's there to rebuild it. So there's going to be a shit ton flowing through there as well. So we should talk through it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think there's nothing better than doing it when it's a devalued market, you know, so, and you get positioned right before the next, you know, rate hike cuts that come in the next, I guess, year or so. You know, after we get off the 6% number that, it looks like that's going to be sitting there for a while, you know, through this year. Yeah. But then, you know, it'll have to be stymied again, and then we'll all be fat and happy. So
yeah, man, I would like to be happy. I would like to. If fat and happy means wealthy, I'm there for it. So
yeah, I don't mean like the banker.
I've already got the fat. And I am pretty healthy.
No, you just got a little paunch. You're healthy. I'm not talking about like the BIS guy, you know, the Bank of International Settlements. I'm not talking about that kind of.
Yeah, that guy. That's some fat and happy right there.
Fat stacks and happy kind of thing. So, but yeah, no, I mean, any other news to go over before we run?
I mean, we got a ton, but I'm good for
tomorrow.
The day. You good for the day? Yeah, man.
Yeah,
I was
absolutely.
trying to find. Oh, listen, I wanted to find this this review from Northern Star on our YouTube channel that I had missed somehow on the comments because, you know, little ego stroke for you and me before we go off.
Oh, really? Let's see it.
Yeah. Northern Star said, "Oh man, what a great perspective on trading from Sean. Thank you so much for sharing. Only wish I could see the charts a bit better. Y'all are my favorite source of information relating to crypto, and I listen to every single episode of the podcast. Being part of the younger generation, it's clear from the personal anecdotes that history rhymes. I love how personable and real you guys, Brad and Joe, are, as well as the consistently great company you both keep. Thank you again for making my job driving all day palatable and with your amazing content. Sending love and hope everything is all right for Joe and his family." But this was from 2 months ago that I missed it. So anyway, it was just really nice to read that this morning. It was a nice little boost.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know it's always good to feel validated, you know, that it's making a difference. And, you know, that's kind of the way I felt at East Denver when we were running around. I was like looking around going, you know, we got to be like in the top 10 of oldest guys here. Well, at least you anyhow. And, and so, but the reception we got, I mean, you would never feel like anybody even, it was like there was such an eagerness to sort of learn, or not know if learn's the right word, but at least hear our stories, and our anecdotes and our, as Juan Angel of Phantom put it a couple of shows ago, decades of experience. And I think that's what people see. And I think they do like the shtick a little bit, and the, repartee between us, and also the interactions with the core audience members that we see every day here.
We have such a great audience, adding so much to what we do. Makes the job 10 times easier. And it was cool at the show was having people come up to us and saying, "Hey, I know you." And it's like, "Oh, shit, really?" That was weird.
That's the way I felt too. I'm like, really? I mean, when we saw, like, when we're in podcast room 5, and then I got a message from Lacey Kalani of Meta Intro that we had on the show a few weeks or months ago, the Web3 wallet company. And, she's like, "Oh yeah, we were watching you guys." She says, like, she kind of used an adjective of, like, not stalking, but, stealthily observing us. And I thought I saw her out there, but you would see people out there that, you'd kind of wave to, and you realize that, that was happening continuously. And so I do realize that there's a lot of people listening to us, not, on the other channels, as well as the core audience watching here. And I think it's getting picked up somewhere else too, because we're definitely getting some reach. Which,
absolutely. Well,
is
funny. I've started embedding. I built out my own URL tracker instead of Bitly because I had some issues with them blocking recently. And I've been tracking it, and there's engagement coming from somewhere else in these URLs beyond podcast feed, YouTube, something else. These URLs is getting out there because the click-through rates are much higher than the engagement rates on, say, Twitter or YouTube or wherever. So it's really interesting to watch. We'll see. I mean, it probably is all podcast because we don't have any. You can't get engagement data from podcast feed, right? The statistics and analytics on podcasts are really limited. So we can't get that. And that may be where all the click-throughs are coming from. But anyway, it's interesting to see.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that review. I like that. It's always nice. All right. So
let's wrap it up, Joe. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening and watching. We appreciate you guys. We love and appreciate you being here. Sean, thank you so much for introducing us to Mark. I think I love their business. I think it's a great play. Kind of wish I had been had the opportunity to put a little bit in them as well. But I love what they're doing. I think there's some big opportunities in that space, and appreciate him coming on. Mark, thank you for coming on. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, we'd love if you could leave us just a 1-sentence review, like that North Star did recently with us. It boosts our egos, which we don't really need, but it also boosts us in the algorithm. So if you get a chance, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Take just a minute to do that. You can leave a comment on YouTube. That also helps. I'm putting them all on the website eventually. And please subscribe, click the little bell. And Joe would like you to please smash the thumbs up on YouTube if you're watching us right now. Shizzy says, "Great show, guys. Thank you. Thank you, Shizzy, for being here, buddy. We appreciate you adding to it every day." Thank you, Niblets. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Shizzy. Thank you, Chuck. And Euphoric. I appreciate all of you participating as per usual. You will be missed if you are not here. So thanks a lot. Joe, have a great afternoon.
You too, buddy. And thanks, everyone. We will see you tomorrow for Sean Day.
Sean Day! Later.
Sean